Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to bring up our next speaker, John Murphy. John has over 25 years of success as a business technology leader and IT risk management consultant. He has created and led technology risk management programs for federal and state governmental entities, e-commerce organizations, in the legal, financial, real estate vertical, and in other verticals. John has experience in the areas of risk management, emergency management, and organizational resiliency, as well as publishing, including internationally. In Computer World, Network World, CSO, CIO, and Bloomberg Business Week. John has been providing consulting services to C-levels regarding compliance and remediation for SOX, GLBA, HIPAA, PCI, NIST, FFIEC, and other specific frameworks as a virtual CSO for 6 years prior to joining AOS in 2013. John has an MBA and holds CISSP in SI, IAM, and IEM, CBCP, ITILV version 3, and CHSV certification, currently formerly PMP, CDCP, CCNA, MCSE, MCDBA certifications, and a top secret clearance while consulting to the Department of Homeland Security. John will be talking about the top 10 trends for 2015 in information technology risk management. I hope you like those acronyms because I just called it all alphabet soup. But I'm sure that's real important. But let's give a warm welcome to John Murphy.
Perfect.
Here we are. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Yeah, as I tell a lot of my coworkers, all that alphabet soup and 55 cents will get me a cup of coffee at my house. So a lot of time in classrooms and organizations like this to get those, but that's not why we're here to talk about it. Most of you have been here all day, right? Been sitting in seats like this with a speaker like me. So we're going to do a little physical activity to get the blood up to the brain. You don't have to get up, right there in your seats. Put your hands on your hips. Come on, hands on your hips. You don't have to get up. You can stay seated. Hands on your hips. Everybody swing and sway to your left. Now back to your right. Go forward. A little bit backward. All right, sit back down. Wow, if I'd have known the audience was this easily swayed, I'd have asked to borrow money. All right, let's get the legal stuff out of the way here, if we can. It's in PowerPoint presentation mode, I thought. Okay, all I gotta do is figure out how to advance the slides now. It's advancing for me, but not for you. I can get it over there, I'll figure it out. Nope. There it is. That's going to be fun when I try to do embedded movies. Okay. Still not. There's got to be a clicker, right? Nope. Nope. I'm changing slides, but it's not.
There it goes.
No, it's changing here, but it's not changing there.
Okay, let's see.
This is why technology is so much fun.
Let's see. I wonder what happens if I come over here and just hit on that.
Not moving.
It's not, is it? Okay, we'll fix it. All right.
All right, we'll stall a little bit. The next slide was going to be a legal disclaimer, okay? Any lawyers in the room? No, okay. Basically, what it says in a nutshell is I'm going to talk about lots of companies, lots of software, lots of hardware, and those are not necessarily endorsements. Anything I say up here is on me, not on my company, AOS, And if you see something in the way of an endorsement or a hardware recommendation or a software recommendation, you need to contact them directly, not necessarily me, because I'm not pushing their hardware or software. Here comes tech support to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Anyhow, that slide is called the "you can quote me but" slide. I couldn't get it to move up there. Like I've got embedded content in there that I need to be able to touch the slide.
Best bet would be to get out of presenter mode.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Now what? Let me do it.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we'll try it again. There's that slide I was talking about, don't quote me. This is what we're going to talk about today. I plan on not reading my slides because I figure everybody here is over 18 and learn to read. So hope that won't bother you too much. But anyhow, that's just the way I roll. We're going to cover those 8 areas. We'll have time for questions and answers. But if there's questions in the meantime, we want to do this very interactive, so don't hesitate to interrupt. Okay. What are we talking about? We're talking about technology risk management. It's a little bigger than security. Notice that it includes a few things besides IT or InfoSec security. Business continuity, disaster recovery is in there. So is governance and compliance. And say, well, John, what is technology risk management? It's about assessing the risks from technology in the entire enterprise, and then prioritizing and evaluating those risks, and then taking a strategy to do one of 3 things with that risk. Anybody know what you can do, the 3 things with risk? You can accept it, you can mitigate it, you can transfer it, okay? So that's what technology risk management does. It's a piece of operational risk management, which is a piece of enterprise management. Anybody know what a D&D insider is? And if you say Dungeons and Dragons, I'm gonna throw something at you. Disenfranchised, disgruntled insiders. They are our #1 biggest worry still. Every one of the big breaches that you've heard about have had a couple of things in common. They have had third parties to some degree or another. They were either intentionally or accidentally involved by an intentional or a negligent act by a disenfranchised, disgruntled insider. For instance, a great many, the number of people at Target that have left from the IT shop are now on the blog sites and speaking circuits talking about how they knew that the HVAC was a problem, the vendor was, and that they told IT leadership for a while, and IT leadership said, go away, we're PCI compliant. And anybody who was in here just before this presentation heard about PCI compliance. It's not the same as completely secure, if there is such an animal. It is compliant. So when you combine insiders and third parties, you've got a huge problem. The hackers are getting smarter, they're getting more persistent and more patient, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then all those regulations that you heard in my introduction, they're not going away, they're only getting stronger. And to that end, let's see if this will work. I want to give you a movie here we can look at. Hopefully it'll show up there. Yep.
There is a battle raging, one that many don't even realize exists. A fight in which anyone can be the victim and anyone can be the aggressor. It can be motivated by politics, by ideals, or simply by financial gain. Just recently, a large company was targeted, and due to one of these attacks, ended up more than $60 million worse off. Targeted attacks are a reality. What you're about to see is based on the real story of one such attack.
Then don't even go there.
Go where?
Everyone knows hand shot first.
Hand shot second.
What are you talking about? You not seen the original 1977? First.
Star Wars reference.
Hey, get over here. Got a job. So this is what we're going to do. First of all, we need to research the target. Find out what you can about their finances and social interactions. Make a list of departments and staff and get them on the wall. want to know what these people are like. What are their online habits? Do they talk about their employer online? Also give me their perimeter security and their internet-facing systems. We really need to know what we're dealing with here.
The criminals have examined the target's defenses and know what they're up against. Now they're packing and encoding different malware samples to make sure they remain undetected by standard security software. Sean is using anonymizing software to connect to underground forums. These are used to offer attack toolkits, intelligence, or even just for criminals to offer each other advice.
So what do we have, Ralph?
Well, we have our tools set up. The ones that didn't get picked up by any of the security scanners we set up. And for access, we set up a booby trap website that will install the tool on the computer as soon as the user gets there. The link was sent to all the email addresses that we found on the social profiles of the employees. Now we just gotta wait for them to take the bait.
Fortunately, the security software recognized the URL the criminals were using to host their exploit kit, and the email was automatically deleted.
That was 2 days ago. Has anyone taken the tool yet?
No.
Then we need something else.
Maybe the old-fashioned way. The old free flash drive trick.
Hi, I found this in front of the main entrance. Could you check it out, please?
Yeah, it's good you've got it here. Thanks.
What are the employees talking about now?
Well, a lot of people are talking about the company lowering pay.
And there you go.
This is it. The criminals have broken through the defenses, combining a zero-day exploit with some social engineering to get the victim to open their malicious file. This computer is now under their control, and they can use this user account to begin exploring the network undetected. The hackers look for any information they can use to exploit the system and gain higher privileges to access further data. Here they find a login page to an HR database and attempt an SQL injection attack. It fails. They find an email from another user that seems to have access to important databases and target him. After dumping the local password cache, the attackers have domain admin credentials. They browse the network to find the machine belonging to the new target. They connect with the remote desktop to drop a backdoor for later use and access the local hard drive, searching them for sensitive data.
We picked up a minor breach on one of our workstations. We've isolated it and made a thorough scan. We found the bot and removed it. Everything's fine now.
Listen, we threw some back doors on it. We have domain admin, which means we have access to the whole network. We're so close. It's a done deal.
Now it's time for the payoff. Exfiltration. They return to the compromised machine and find their goal, credentials for a development database. A brute force attack against the server gets them root access and they're free to dump the entire source code for a critical project. All they have to do now is bring it home.
Just like that.
These types of cyber attack are becoming more frequent, costing companies hundreds of thousands of dollars. Traditional security simply can't keep up. Criminals can test their attacks to the point of invisibility and use legitimate compromised accounts to stay under the radar once inside a network. Effective security should operate on the assumption that a breach will happen. Effective security should be your eyes and ears throughout the network, enabling you to detect and contain every aspect of a targeted intrusion.
So, notwithstanding that commercial for a good vendor, the point of that video was that the attackers are becoming more professional, more persistent, and more patient. We're going to talk about one of the exploits that's going on out right there right now that the FBI is trying to get the word out to people like us every day about, because it is so sophisticated, executives are falling victim to it. Questions so far? All right. If I were to tell you, and the video gave this away, of the 3 main types of exposure, paper, people, and hackers, who thinks what is number 1? of those three types? Yes, sir. You think people. Anybody else? Guess what? Number 3 is paper. Number 2 is the hackers. And number 1 is employee negligence. I just did a presentation in Little Rock, Arkansas, day before yesterday about cyber liability insurance. Not here to sell you on that, but we did some surveys of what the number 1 claim is. The number 1 claim, by far, way above anything else, is not hackers, it's employee negligence. They left their laptop on the subway, they were using their VPN carelessly at Starbucks or wherever, all kinds of conversations on cell phones or people are hearing. So in this day and age of Twitter, Facebook, and all the other social media where we all want to share everything, people have become what used to be our strongest asset. They're now one of our weakest links. So let's talk about the trends. Used to be the bad guys only wanted to get your information. Now, in some cases, they want to destroy your information because they are your competition, or they have been hired by your competition. The destruction is becoming increasingly more commonplace rather than just the theft. We just talked about the movie, how the threats are becoming more sophisticated. It's like not only is organized crime in other countries becoming our attackers, it's whole nation states. It's no longer the 19-year-old pimply-faced kid in their mom's basement, that's a script kiddie. And you say, well, John, I haven't got any social security numbers or credit card numbers. Why on earth would they want me? Anybody know the answer to that question? Why everybody's a target? Because you've got compute power. You've got hundreds of servers, maybe thousands, depending on how big you are. And if I can take those computers over to do my bidding and anonymize my attack, then I've gained a tremendous foothold on the ability to do more damage to get the computers that I'm after, the one with the PCI, the ones with the credit cards, the one with, social securities or whatever else. Legislation is not going away. There is every reason to believe that every standard that we think we know about today, PCI, HIPAA, GLBA, NERC, CIP, CISSP, whatever, is only going to get more stringent. And in the current administration and probably the next, we are talking about actually becoming regulated across all industries with some cyber legislation. Let's hope that they get industry experts involved to do that, or else we'll know that legislation can be, shall we say, more drama than it is actually effective in some cases. So that's not about this administration, it's just the nature of government. Yes, sir. You're right. In case you didn't hear him, he said that until we get more like the EU in looking at internet privacy as well as security as a holistic viewpoint, it's only going to get worse. That's true, but that's a human nature problem that we can't fix today, but you are exactly right. Absolutely no argument here on my part. All right, predictive threat analytics. That is a specialization inside of cybersecurity. There are tools out there. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on that. But if we can imagine it, the bad guys are doing it. And there's really, really sharp bad guys out there that are imagining stuff every day, something new. And those tools for predictive threat analytics are very sophisticated and something you ought to consider. And if you can't afford them themselves, then join associations like ISA, InfraGard, and others that do have the ability to at least let you alert to trends that are happening out there. As I said earlier, all the major breaches that you've heard about, Neiman Marcus, Lowe's, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, not Lowe's, Home Depot, etc., they had two things in common: D&D insiders and third-party vendors. So you may have your act completely together, okay? You may have all the next-gen firewalls, IPS, IDS, all that good stuff. in place. You may even have a SOC and a whole staff to watch it. That's wonderful. What about your mission-critical third-party vendors? And I'm talking about everybody from the plant watering people to the companies that help you do the cabling on your network. Because every one of those people has some level, whether it's physical access to logical access, to your network. And one of the easiest ways to compromise somebody is to switch out the plant watering people. Say, what? Think about it. You're used to seeing me or someone that looks like me come in every night at 5 o'clock or in the middle of the day and water all your plants. And I've been coming for 2 years. But suddenly, somebody else comes in. Oh, John's sick. Are you going to check the credentials of that gal or guy? No. They're going to wander all over your premises, into all the executives' offices, watering their ficuses, standing behind them, looking at their computer screens and what's on their desk. And you all heard of Google Glasses. Click, click, click. And they're getting stuff like that. So every third-party vendor is something to worry about. Technology risk management. There was a whole series of articles in the Wall Street Journal on Monday. If you're not Wall Street Journal readers, too bad, go find a copy. One of the key themes in there is that technology risk management is no longer just our problem, ours being IT. It really needs to be a board level issue, and in some companies is becoming a board level issue. My practice is often engaged by the chief risk officer, the CFO, or the board of directors to double check IT. We're the guard who guards the guards. And that's going to happen more and more because the executives are the ones whose name's going to be dragged through the mud in the newspaper or maybe go to jail if they did something untoward. Boundless networks. Everybody's got a smartphone, mobile workforce, all the youngsters coming in want to use their iPads and this and so forth and so on, and there's nothing wrong with that, except no longer are you in control of a hard exterior network. It's going to be tougher. So mobile device management is going to be something that's very important, but it's not yet there. It's kind of like the promise of the cloud. We haven't fully baked that out. It's getting there, but it's not there yet. Mobile device management's not there quite yet. There's some good vendors out there, but you definitely need to pay attention to it. Access management. Right now, there are boardrooms, conference rooms, and foyers in every Fortune 1000 firm that I can go take this laptop and plug into a port that's there just because they designed it there when they built the building, that I can probably do some serious damage to their network off of. Most of those companies haven't even thought about disabling the ports on the back of their smartphones. So think about it. That courtesy phone you have out in the lobby right now, you can jack into the back of that wirelessly or hardwired, and you're on their network. So if you work in an environment like that, that's one thing you can take away today. Go ask somebody if that's still a valid port, and if at the very least, go get it turned off in the wiring closet. Better solutions like NAC, or the whole flavor of NAC type network access control devices, are something you ought to think about. Cyber benchmarking. Anybody ever heard of the Ponemon Institute? A couple of you. You ought to all look them up. They used to be this brilliant think tank followed by Dr. Ponemon, and he wrote up these reports and no one picked them up. But about in 2010, they finally started getting picked up. And now everybody who's anybody cites Ponemon Institute data reports. They do an annual cost of cybercrime study, and they tell you what the different industries are being exposed to, what the cost of a typical breach is. And the 2014 number is staggering for the cost of a typical breach. Anybody that hasn't read Ponemon want to hazard a guess what a typical single record breach cost is for 3 years? Say again? Per record. Now it's to $1,500. 2014 study says $1,500. Somebody do the quick back of the napkin math. How many records are in your database times $1,500? You say, well, John, how does it be $1,500? Most of the 46 states that have cyber breach definitions and legislation in place require you to do 3 years of credit service monitoring for each affected record. Then there's the litigation that follows. Then there's the brand reputation loss. Anybody noticed all the advertising going on for Target? You can't watch any major network channel or any cable channel without some really cute, clever new commercial for Target. You know, that's costing them millions, and it's trying to get us to go back into their stores. And I love Target, but it's not working. They're having to lay off 3,000 people this year alone. We collectively have given Target the back of our hands. Not because they necessarily deserved it, because it can happen to anybody. I've been doing this for 25 years, and my identity's been compromised twice. Not something I did wrong, but Anthem, when the healthcare company got breached, my records were in there. I used to be a federal government worker for the Postal Service. My records were in there when they got hacked. So I have 2 different credit monitoring services now for the next 3 years because of both of those breaches. And yes, I have LifeLock, but that's just me, because it can happen to anyone. So poor Target getting attacked, you know, who's going to be next? And it says, well, that's only the big guys. They've got all the money. No, it's not. They're coming after everybody, small business, medium business, mom and pop shops, because if nothing else, they want the compute power. And I think we've talked about TRM as not a technology issue alone till we're blue in the face. So why? Jackie would say, why? 5 reasons. Money, obviously, we talked about that. If I can damage you and I'm the other company, then I gain. So reputation is huge. You may have intellectual property, new formulas, a new way of doing things, a new line of business, whatever, and if I can get a hold of it and copy it or beat you to the punch with it, I'm again ahead of the game. Blackmail. There are any numbers of bad things that people do in corporate networks. Can we all agree on that? And if I can find some compromising information about the right executives by doing a breach, then I can blackmail them, I can damage them as a competitor, I can do all those things above. And you say, well, John, you know, we appreciate you being here and all, and you're a somewhat so-called expert, but who's backing you up? The new director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation gave his first interview to 60 Minutes a few months ago. He talked about 2 subjects. One was ISIS, and the other was the epidemic that we all need to be worried about, cybercrime. There's a link to it. You can read the article. You can watch the video. He spent quite a bit of time talking about how everybody ought to be concerned, no matter what business you're in, as an individual or anything else. Cybercrime is an epidemic that's going to get us all one of these days. So to that end, you say, well, you're blowing it up, John. It's not just, this is not that bad. This is a website that you can all go to. It's a product from this company called Norse IP Viking. What they're doing here with this video, this site fully loads, if it will, is showing you what a real-time attack looks like from cyberspace. And maybe it's down. But anybody ever watch War Games, that show in the 80s? Do you remember the screenshot where it showed the missiles going? That's what this looks like typically. Don't know why it's not loading now. It appears to be fully loaded, but the pictures aren't happening. When this is going on normally, 9 to 5, it gets to look like a spaghetti bowl. But you can go back and look at this historically, and every time there has been a major headline-breaking breach, it is just covered with red and green and blue lines going everywhere. Typically on this map, what you'll see is targets at 2 places in the United States. Anybody want to hazard a guess where the 2 geographic targets in the United States are? 2 most common. Close. Seattle. Why Seattle? Microsoft. And St. Louis. Anybody hazard a guess why St. Louis? St. Louis is the headquarters for all government information records. So anybody that's been in any kind of federal service, so all the veterans, all of the civil service workers, everything, all the records are there. the best kind of credentials in the world that you can see, that you can steal, are ex-federal government workers. And the bad guys know that. Okay, this is a rhetorical question. We're going to look at a technology risk management maturity model, kind of like the CMMI model, if you know about that, Carnegie Mellon. And the idea here is for you to look at it and figure out where you think your organization is. And here's the rules. It's real simple. You cannot say that you're a level 4 unless you have got everything in level 3 done, or 2, or 1, whatever the case is. Most companies are hovering down there in level 2. They're in a defense in-depth mode only. They're scrambling to protect themselves. They haven't got up to making those priority-based decisions by impact and likelihood on what the risk is, and we'll talk about that some more. Here's another view. This is by Gartner. While you're looking at that, I'm going to help you do a little math real quick. This ought to scare the bejeebers out of you. There's 95% of the companies that Gartner interviewed, spelling mistake included, that are in the corrective, awareness, or blissful ignorance phase. Now this is from 2012, but I doubt it's moved up much. The point is, 95% of the companies that Gartner was interacting with on this survey are in the let me protect myself mode, not in the let me do best practices, operational excellence phase. That's scary. So, what can we do about it? You've heard the top 10 trends. Now we're going to talk about some of the things that you can go away from here today and start making a difference with. We'll talk more about each one here real quick. So, get and stay informed. You're doing that today. You're here, all right? So, being a member of ISA, going out to the LinkedIn communities, taking additional courses, all of those are good things, and you have to do it because the bad guys are constantly changing the game. Blogs. There are some excellent blogs out there on these topics by experts. This is just one. He's a specialist in IT law. IT law is one of the most complicated, convoluted areas you can imagine because it's so new. They haven't really codified everything, so I gave you that one. And then there's an info risk today. All those are active links. When you get the presentation, you can click on them and get there. Cultural risk appetite. What the devil does that have to do with the price of tea in China? It's like this. Leadership in an organization dictates a lot of things. If that leader has never experienced a lot of bad things in her or his life, they're more likely to be risk embracing, or if they've always been lucky, they're risk embracing, which is okay, that's their prerogative. Or if they've been bitten a time or two, they're more likely to be risk averse. And I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I was helping a law firm do a business continuity disaster recovery program. And I had a Chicago EVP from Ernst & Young behind me and a New York EVP from Ernst & Young behind me. And I was just a lowly senior manager talking to this law firm about ways that business continuity could be called into action, why it would happen. And there was tornadoes and fires and floods and all that good stuff. And I also explained to the managing partner that, this is before active shooter was a buzzword. I said, what you do in the way of lawsuits and so forth, you could have a disgruntled plaintiff or something come in here and shoot the place up. You got to understand, this managing partner was the quintessential Texas millionaire, pulled himself up by the bootstraps, larger than life. God rest his soul, he's no longer with us, but he was a character. He said, "What'd you say, boy?" And I said, "Well, one of your people that you've beaten in a lawsuit or something, you come in here with guns and start shooting the place up." He goes, "What?" Reaches out, pulls 2 pearl-handled .45 automatics, cocks them, lays them on the table, and says, "Let them come." My point is, he was very, very risk-embracing. The 2 Ernst & Youngers from Chicago and New York passed out. They were very risk-averse. Okay. So, these questions are things you kind of need to find out. Is there a risk management office? Have we had problems in the past? Or the worst possible thing you could find out is that this whole risk thing, TRM, technology risk management, is buried in the bowels of MIS. And I hope nobody still works for an MIS department. It's now IT, y'all. It's been that way since the 90s. Anyhow, if they're buried down that low, probably the culture is very risk embracing, at least when it comes to technology risk management. So what you want to do is create a risk register. What's a risk register? It's where you sit down with a piece of paper and some other smart people and you start listing what could happen. What happens if? And that's important that you really do that in a brainstorming fashion. You don't throw anything out. So maybe somebody says, well, what happens with a zombie apocalypse? And before you start laughing, if you go out to FEMA.gov right now, guess what's out there? A zombie apocalypse preparedness plan. Why? 2 reasons. To get the young folks to think about risk, because they all think that's cool. And if you can prepare and survive a zombie apocalypse, you're probably going to be able to survive an earthquake, a hurricane, a pandemic, and so forth. Now, I think they went a little overboard when they also put a map on the best places to avoid the zombie apocalypse, but that's another story. Same premise works, though. And then anybody have an idea where to avoid the apocalypse at? Flyover country, middle of nowhere. Makes sense. If there's no population, you can't get the pandemic, right? Or less chances. All right, so you make that risk of all those things, and then you rank them by likelihood. Do they occur once every 5 years, once every 2 years, once every 3 years, 5 times a year, whatever? And by impact. If this happens, it'll put us out of business. That's a 5. If it happens, it'll cost us, a day's productivity. Maybe that's a 1. And again, this is all relative to your business, and you can use whatever scale you want, but that's the recommendation. And then you plot them on a matrix like that you see there, and you worry about, you make plans to deal with the 5 5s, the highly likely, highly impactful events. Self-assessment. You say, well, what does that mean? It means that you need to get a tool, and there's a link to one right there, and there's other ones out there, where you go through and you ask yourselves the hard questions in private. Don't have an auditor do it yourself first. And see where you are with configuration hardening, with password complexity, with incident response, with change management, with all those areas. There's actually 16 areas in most of these assessment tools. They call them domains. Don't get hung up on Windows domains. They're not Windows domains. There's 16 areas. And if you assess yourself honestly, then bring in IT Pro or a Risk Management Pro to kind of double check you, you'll at least know where you are today versus where you need to be. So that's a real good, easy thing to do. Doesn't cost you a lot of money. You can go out and do shared assessments and find version 6 for free out on the web today. Okay, you can't be an ostrich anymore. You're here, you know that. If you need a template for an incident response plan, we'll sell you one. We'd love to sell you one. Come see me after. But if you want one for free, you can go out to that link right there to the AICPA. American Institute for Certified Public Accountants. It is a very good template. It will get you started. You can fill out that incident action plan for each of those 5 5s that we talked about, right? And then you've got a pretty good start. And you say, well, John, you're telling me I'm going to get bit, that I got to have a plan? Yeah, I am. It's going to happen. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not this year, but it's going to happen. And if you don't have a plan, you're going to be scrambling looking for somebody from my company or somebody else to come bail you out, and it's going to be expensive and maybe too late. When you do that plan, don't forget to put those components in there. And the most important part is to do a post-mortem every time you use that plan or train on the plan, to figure out what went right, what went wrong, what you could have done better, what you didn't need to do, and so forth. A lot of companies will do the right things right when it comes to planning, but they don't exercise the plan, or when they actually use the plan, they don't come back and do that post-mortem. That's fancy Latin for lessons learned. Okay, you're in here getting education. We started off with number 1, as that's the most important thing. You cannot do this with 1 to 3 layers of defense anymore. It takes multiple layers of hardware and software, unfortunately. The other thing I mentioned is you need to use the people and the processes in cooperation with the technology. There is a company that shall remain nameless that we talked to a year or so ago, and we told them that there was all this bad stuff happening. And they said, go away, leave us alone, we're PCI compliant. Fast forward 6 months later, they were breached. No, we didn't do it. And everybody in that IT department has been turned over. That was, somebody had to be a scapegoat. They canned them all. They also spent $6 million in 11 months on hardware and software. $6 million. Who's got that in their IT budget right now? Because I want to talk to you. Okay. Anyhow, they did that, and we went back to visit them, talking to the new gals and guys. They had forgotten the people and the process part. They had every cool piece of hardware and software they could, but they didn't do change management, they didn't do incident management, they didn't do security and event monitoring, they didn't do any of the other soft skill stuff. So we're going to help them with that. You need that professional expertise. All right, here's what some of you may have come here today for. What is the bare minimum of stuff I got to do? All right, this is from Forrester, Gartner, Verizon, and the National Institutes of Insurance. Based on all of their findings, they say if you've got these layers in protection, you can get away with 75% of the bad things should not happen to you. This was done in 2014. The rules are changing. Next week there'll be another item on this list, but I provided you the list. Anybody not know what those things are? If you don't, we'll be glad to talk to you afterwards. What the future holds. We're almost finished. That's a pretty busy slide, but here's the bottom line for all you youngsters and aspiring would-be professionals in security and technology risk management. There's boatloads of opportunity. Typical chief security officer, if they can find one, is being paid well into six figures, and quite often that's a former network engineer. Doesn't really have the seasoning to be a chief anything. When you find somebody that's been through these kind of crises and survived, that can talk to the boards, that can do presentations, that has an MBA, that has all the alphabet soup and so forth and so on, and is a real former hands-on technical gal or guy, they're $350,000 or more anywhere in the United States. It's not, well, that's what they get for them in New York. No, that's anywhere, minimum $350,000. I don't know many companies that have $350,000 technical professionals. They're just hard. I mean, Amazon's, eBay's, Intel's, they got them, but most companies don't afford that. They can't afford it. So think about the virtual security officer offering. There are companies out there that will give you access to an entire range of skill sets around technology risk management. You get the network engineer level, and you get the chief strategist and everybody in between in a block of hours that's discounted, and you get an hour to use them. I know of a number of companies that can do that, and I work for one of them. Now, the most interesting man in America would tell you, the world would tell you that he only uses AOS consultants, and I hope somebody in this audience will do that too. But in the meantime, you've got a link to the Ponemon Institute. You got a link to that shared assessments methodology for doing a self-assessment. You've got an ISO 31000 standard for doing enterprise risk management. And then, of course, you've got our link. Questions? Yes, sir.
So, I'm a fellow online. There is a personal question. I keep a pretty close eye on this, although they're published a lot. I have never, would be curious to know where you got this $1,500 number. Never heard of that.
I can send you the link. If you'll give me a card afterwards, I'll send you the link where I got it.
Have they just published a report on this?
There's a cybercrime, cost of cybercrime study for 2014.
Cost of cybercrime,
Correct.
not the cost of data.
No, it was the cost of cybercrime.
Well, it could extrapolate that. So the way Larry and I became friends was over a fundamental disagreement about extrapolating averages from totals and totals from averages. And I would submit to you as something of a statistician, and with some standing in the community in that regard, that it can be very misleading. I don't mean to suggest that data breaches are not expensive in some cases, but I would submit to you that a more useful way of trying to get to the costs would be through some modeling and getting away from overall averages. So that's my 2 cents worth on the subject.
I'm not a fellow of the Ponemon Institute. I'm only a consumer of the information. So given that he is a professional statistician, take him at his word. All I know is that if you look at SecureWorks, Fishnet, Trend Micro, McAfee, Symantec, shall I go on, they point to the Ponemon Institute studies and say, and I'm sure it's fear and unknown and dread, it's what they're selling on. Here's what we say. Modeling is right. You can do all kinds of things. What is it, 92% of all statistics are made up on the fly? Something like that. So that's true. 93. That's true. But the point is, it's getting expensive, more expensive daily, and the cyber liability insurance folks are getting much more serious when they send you out that questionnaire as to what they're going to do to protect you, and they'll recommend numbers often off the Ponemon Institute.
I don't disagree about that. I mean, those numbers are...
Could be misleading.
They're reasonable in some cases, in my view, but to say that in a breach of... And something else really important to understand about Ponemon's numbers, there's a specific disclaimer in the beginning of the cost of data that says, we study breaches 5,000 to 100,000 records. You must not use our extrapolated averages for breaches larger than that. They state that very clearly, so you can't say Target lost 100 million records.
Times 1,500.
That, you know, Larry Ponemon was standing next to you, he would say, no, no, no. Just our study plan. And a lot of people don't read the disclaimers, usually it's the first thing they read.
Good points. We're lucky to have a fellow from the Ponemon Institute in the audience. That's awesome. Other points of clarification or questions? All right, I'll give you back 10 minutes. Thank you very much for your time.